That familiar eagle and shield that seems to follow presidents everywhere they go. Inaugurations, lecterns, Air Force One, state motorcars, presidential papers, presidential trains, commemorative objects, the 50-cent coin, and more. But where does it come from and what does it symbolize? Well, you've come to the right place. Today we will be delving into the fascinating history and interesting secrets of the U.S. presidential seal. Welcome to Presidential History. The early history of the presidential seal is a little foggy, as we don't know exactly when a formal seal was first created to be used by the president. As noted by the eagle and the shield, unlike most seals of the federal government, the president's seal derives not from statute but from use, custom, and tradition. So where did it all begin? Historians generally agree that the first presidential seal of sorts descended from the seal of the Presidents of the Continental Congress, first used by Thomas Mifflin in 1783. Here you can see a 19th century drawing of the seal and its impression as a wax seal on an envelope from the 1780s. While we don't know whether all the presidents of the Continental Congresses used this seal, it does seem to be a pretty clear predecessor to the current one, or at least the tradition of the chief executive using one. This early seal contains elements of early American national symbolism that are present on the Great Seal of the United States, right above the eagle's head. The six-sided star made up of littler six-sided stars and its surrounding clouds are almost identical between the two. A more direct ancestor of the current seal came about in a very unusual way, as noted by the eagle and the shield. One day in June 1894, a young man named Paleman Howard Dorset, who had come to Washington from Illinois 3 years before to take a position with the Department of Agriculture, presented himself at the entrance at the south wing of the State, War, and Navy Building at 17th Street and New York Avenue Northwest, 1 block away from the White House. In the building, Dorset sought out Galliard Hunt of the Department of State, a man about his own age whose brochure entitled The Seal of the United States had been published in 1892. Dorset showed Hunt a metal die incised with the arms of the United States and told him of its having been handed down in his family from a kinsman who had received it from a nephew of George Washington. Comparison of an impression from the Dorset seal and from the Great Seal of 1782 reveals some striking resemblances. The two are of exactly the same diameter, the encircling ornamental borders are similar, and the general arrangement of the device on the Dorset seal shows unmistakably that it was copied from that of the seal of 1782. There are differences, however, and at least some of them are improvements. The engraving of the Dorset seal is more spirited and vigorous. The eagle is sturdier and a livelier bird. Its wings are more widely extended, more like those of the eagle on the present Great Seal. Its neck and legs are more fully developed. Its feathering is more detailed, and the tail shows 9 instead of 7 feathers, anticipating the 9 of the present seal. Searches in the records of the Department of State, in the Manuscript Division of the Library of Congress, and in the British Archives among documents there sealed with the Great Seal, disclose no impression of the Dorset seal, meaning it had never been used, to our knowledge. It can be said with certainty that at no time was that the seal that was ever used as the Great Seal of the United States. In fact, no impression from the Dorset seal die has been found anywhere, except as Miller had made some black ink on a proof press in the National Museum print shop. Searches of printed sources of various kinds, including legislative records, have failed to reveal any further information. The documented history of the President's seal begins in 1850. It appears that in that year President Millard Fillmore drew a crude sketch of a device for a presidential seal and sent it to Edward Stabler of Sandy Spring, Maryland, who had established a reputation as a seal engraver and manufacturer of seal presses. Historians are indebted to an unidentified writer for the New York newspaper The Daily Graphic in 1885 for unearthing and recording this bit of White House history. As part of a series of articles on the United States government seals, the Graphic published a half-column entitled The President's Seal, though much of it deals with other seals, and on another page a group of illustrations with the overall legend, The President's Seals, Past and Present. The illustrations include 4 drawings. 1. Facsimile of designs sent by President Fillmore to Edward Stabler, sealmaker, from which to make a seal for him, July 26, 1850. 2. The Old Seal. 3. a larger drawing with no separate legend, supposedly showing the device of the President's seal executed by Stabler in 1850 and still extant in 1885. And 4. The President's Seal, which, as the accompanying text makes clear, was copied from an article by Benson J. Lossing, who had illustrated a seal used in 1784 by Thomas Mifflin, then the President of the Continental Congress. Because it is called the Old Seal, and because it only has 27 stars, it seems likely that the Old Seal had been cut in 1845, during James K. Polk's administration, when there were 27 states in the Union. But then what of Fillmore's Small Seal? Fillmore did indeed use a small seal on some correspondence while he was president, but it was a very simple seal with the script F for Fillmore within a circular border. And for such a seal, Stabler would not have charged $20, the same amount charged for the large presidential seal. This, for the time being, will remain a mystery. No example has been found of an actual impression of either the Old Seal or the Stabler seal with 31 stars. The envelopes bearing the seals were presumably discarded upon their delivery to the Senate or the House of Representatives. An examination of such messages in the National Archives failed to turn up a surviving seal impression. 10 years after the 1850 seal was standardized, the newly elected President Abraham Lincoln updated the seal to match the number of states in the Union, or in the seal's case, the number of stars representing them. This seal was ordered and used by Lincoln, quote, the design exactly the same as the one labeled the Old Seal in the Daily Graphic article, except it has 36 stars, as Nevada became the 36th state in October 1864. Until the late 1870s, official stationery items used by the presidents of the United States bore no coats of arms. Invitations from Presidents Washington, Jefferson, Monroe, John Quincy Adams, Jackson, Polk, Fillmore, Pierce, and Lincoln were engraved, printed, or written on plain paper. Some of President Grant's invitations were likewise undecorated, but others, including the invitation to a dinner on March 3, 1877, in honor of President-elect Rutherford B. Hayes, were embossed or decorated simply with the initial G, for Grant. Very shortly after President Hayes took office, the first known White House invitation bearing a presidential coat of arms was issued. As Hayes was inaugurated on March 4, 1877, and as the invitation for a dinner was given in the honor of Grand Duke Alexis Alexandrovich of Russia on the following April 19, the new president or his aides must have acted very promptly indeed in having the coat of arms designed and ordered in an embossing die. An identical coat of arms is at the top of the White House dinner menu for the same occasion. It is not known who designed and executed the embossing dies for the Hayes White House, but the designer, who departed radically from the rendering of the Fillmore seal, exercised a lasting influence on the device of the presidential seal and coat of arms. Very interestingly, most sources on this topic do not note that this seal, designed by Hayes, harkens back to similar seals used by President Washington on Indian peace medals almost 100 years beforehand. While no connection has officially been drawn between the two, the design similarities are completely unmistakable. An element of his design which is carried over to the present is the arc of cloud puffs arranged between the raised wing tips of the eagle, with stars below. Very much the same coat of arms remained in use at the White House from 1877 through the early years of Woodrow Wilson's first administration, although dies of different sizes were prepared, including a much larger die for place cards used while Grover Cleveland was president, and minor variations of the design may be noted. On some later examples, for instance, the eagle only had 5 tail feathers, and on one example in 1916 it had 9. Although the coat of arms was usually embossed in gold, it was rendered in white, that is, without color, on the invitations to a White House wedding in 1906, and in silver when the Tafts celebrated their silver wedding anniversary. In the course of some restoration work at the White House in 1903, during President Theodore Roosevelt's administration, the device of the President's seal, in the form approximating that was described above, was inlaid in bronze in the floor of the north entranceway, otherwise known as the entrance hall of the White House. The inlay was made from a model prepared by the sculptor Philip Martini. In the process of remodeling the White House in 1948, the inlay was removed from the floor and placed above the door of the diplomatic reception room on the ground floor. While Martini followed the general design of the Hayes coat of arms, he took full artistic license in rendering the details in the bronze. The wings of his eagle, while displayed with wingtips pointing up, was shaped differently from those of any other known rendering of the presidential seal device. The eagle's legs, with shaggy feathering reached to the talons, were quite straight and arranged almost vertically on the device, quite unlike the bent legs of the Hayes design or the horizontal arrangement introduced to the Great Seal of 1885. On the top of the shield was a straight horizontal line. The motto was rendered in capital letters as E pluribus unum, with dots separating the words. 10 stars appeared in an arc above the scroll, and 3 more in a line beneath this arc. As on the Hayes coat of arms, the eagle faced its own left towards the arrows in its talon, symbolizing war over peace. But this would be changed later, as we will see. On March 1918, an order was placed for a new State Service of Presidential China, and the approved design included the revised coat of arms. The new design for the presidential coat of arms, as used on White House invitations, showed a number of changes from the Hayes coat of arms, which had been followed with few modifications for about half a century. This revised coat of arms was used not only by President Wilson, but also by Presidents Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, and this was the design in use when Harry S. Truman became president in 1945. The president's seal, as used from the late 19th century, and his flag and coat of arms, as used from 1916, were changed by Executive Order No. 9646, entitled Coat of Arms, Seal, and Flag of the President of the United States, which President Truman signed on October 25, 1945. The most striking alteration, which received a lot of publicity at the time, was turning the eagle's head to face towards its right rather than its left. This was because in its right talon was an olive branch, and in its left talon were 13 arrows. President Truman did this because he thought it was more appropriate for the eagle's head to face the olive branch rather than the arrows, symbolizing the presidency's preferred peace over war. What's funny about this fact is that the Resolute desk, the very desk that the president works on, still has the eagle's head facing the arrows. And that is because it was a gift of Queen Victoria long before the seal was changed. So the old seal is quite present in the Oval Office and the president's life. Another old design of the seal is present in the president's life on the ceiling of the Oval Office. The Martini plaque that we talked about before that was in the floor was also added in plaster on the ceiling of the Oval Office. However, we do know that the plaster work was changed so that the eagle's head could face the right way as designated by President Truman. Will the Resolute desk be changed? We don't think so. Soon after Alaska became the 49th state in 1959, President Eisenhower signed an executive order entitled Coat of Arms, Seal, and Flag of the President of the United States. Similar to Executive Order 9646 of 1945, which it superseded, it had the effect simply of adding a 49th star to the President's coat of arms, seal, and flag, as of July 4, 1959. Following the admission of Hawaii as the 50th and last state on August 21, 1959, President Eisenhower signed another executive order, which again changed the number of stars from 49 to 50. And since 1960, since that order, the President's seal has remained the same. 1 eagle, 13 arrows, 1 olive branch, 1 flying ribbon, 1 shield, 13 stars and rays, and altogether one fantastic piece of history.